When algebraic equations contain fractions, you can either clear them of fractions or you can deal with the fractions. I'll refer back to this sheet in a moment. Before we get started clearing of fractions, I need to mention that I do assume that you're already familiar with how to solve algebraic equations that have no fractions to begin with. In order to clear of fractions, I'm going to multiply each side of the equation by the least common denominator. The least common denominator is a 7 in this case. And when I multiply each side of the equation, that's to say I'm going to multiply each term on each side of the equation. The whole point of doing this is to get rid of these denominators. So I'm multiplying by 7, but if I'm multiplying a fraction, I want a fraction. So let's call this 7 over 1, and let's call this 7 over 1. I'll show this explicitly very briefly. You have 7 over 1 times 3/7. So divide by 7 leaves you with a 1. Divide by 7 leaves you with a 1. So all that's left standing is the 3. The way I'm going to show that is divide by 7 leaves 1. Divide by 7 leaves 1. And you have 1 times 3, or 3. And here, divide by 7 is 1. Divide by 7 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. So of course this is confusing to look at. We'll rewrite it. 7 times x, we couldn't reduce anything here. Simply 7x. This will be negative 1 times 3. Bring down your equals. And 1 times 2. So this equation is essentially the same as this equation, but now we don't have any fractions. So we want to get rid of this negative 3. It's being added or subtracted, so you put a positive 3 on each side of the equal. Just draw a line, bring down your 7x. That's a 0. You don't have to write it. This is a 5. You want to get rid of the 7. It's held by multiplication. So you divide by 7. Divide by 7. Of course, that cleans up. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 1x we normally write as simply x. And here we have 5/7. Looking at the next equation, between 5 and 15, 15 is the least common denominator. So we multiply each term by 15. We can reduce. Divide by 5 leaves you with 1. Divide by 5 leaves you with 3. Divide by 15 leaves you with 1. Divide by 15 leaves you with 1. So what's left standing? 15 times x. Bring down that negative. 3 times 4. 1 times 2. I'd say get rid of the negative 12. It's held by addition or subtraction. Negative 12. So put a positive 12 underneath. Positive 12. Just draw a line and bring everything down. 15x. Bring down your equals. We have 14. You want to get rid of your 15. Divide by 15. Divide by 15. And again, this cleans up. 15 goes into 15 once, so you have 1x equals 14/15. I'll mention that in clearing of fractions, I'm working the same 10 problems that I did dealing with fractions, just to emphasize that you have the option of either method to solve the equation. And as you can see on number 1, clearing of fractions, we got 5/7. Dealing with fractions, we got 5/7. On this one numbered 4, clearing of fractions, we got 14/15. And dealing with fractions, we got 14/15. I think for number 1, you would probably say it was easier to just deal with the fraction. And here this one may look simpler, but we did have to get common denominators. So you need to learn each method and just decide which one's easier to use in any given situation. Looking at our two denominators, we'll need the least common denominator. I just look at multiples of the biggest. 5 certainly won't work. 10 won't work. 15, 4 won't go into 15, but 20 works fine. Since 4 goes into 20, 5 obviously goes into 20. This is our least common denominator. We'll multiply each side of the equation by 20. I'll emphasize this one more time. This is 20 over 1 times 3/4. So I can simplify. 4 goes into 4 once. 4 goes into 20 5 times. But the way I'm going to write that here is 4 goes into 4 once. 4 goes into 20 5 times. And when I rewrite this, it's just going to be 5 times 3, or 15a. On this side of the equals, 5 goes into 5 once. 5 goes into 20 4 times. 4 times 2 will give us 8. So 5 times 3 is 15a. Bring down your equals. 4 times 2 is 8. You want a all by itself, so we'll divide by 15. Fifteen goes into 15 one time, so we have 1a, or simply a, is equal to 8/15. Looking at the 10 and the 6, we need the least common denominator. I'll look at multiples of the biggest, which is 10. So obviously 10 won't work. You try 20. 6 won't go into 20 evenly, but 30 does work. So 30 is the least common denominator. We'll multiply each term on each side by 30. And we'll simplify before we multiply. 10 goes into 10 once. 10 goes into 30 3 times. 6 goes into 6 once. 6 goes into 30 5 times. 10 goes into 10 once. 10 goes into 30 3 times. So rewriting this equation without fractions, we have 3 times 1. Bring down your negative or minus, whatever you want to say. 5 times r. And negative 3 times 3 is 9. Well, I'm sorry, negative 9. I'd say get rid of the 3 held by addition or subtraction. So this is a positive 3. Put negative 3 underneath. Negative 3 on the other side. Bring down your negative 5r. Your equal sign. Signs are the same, so this gives us a negative 12. You want to get rid of the negative 5, held by multiplication, so we divide by negative 5. Divide by negative 5. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is a positive 1, so we have r is equal to, and negative divided by negative is positive, so we have 12/5. This is simplified, but we can also write it as a mixed number. It goes in twice with 2 left over, and you keep your denominator. Either answer is acceptable. Here there's only one denominator of 5, so 5 is our least common denominator, and we multiply each side by 5. We simplify first. Divide by 5 is 1. Divide by 5 is 1. And here we can't simplify. So rewriting this equation, we have a negative. 1 times 4 is negative 4. Bring down your equals. 5 times 3 is 15y. You want to get rid of the 15. It's held by multiplication, so we divide by 15 on each side. 15 divided by 15 is 1. So y is equal to a negative 4/15. Looking at this one with a mixed number, we're going to want to multiply or divide. You cannot multiply or divide by a mixed number. We have to make this improper. So 7 times 3 is 21, plus 4 is 25. Keep that denominator, and of course it's still negative. Bring down our x and the 5. Now the least common denominator is 7. So we multiply each side of the equation by 7. Simplify first. 7 goes into 7 once. 7 goes into 7 once. So 1 times negative 25 is negative 25x. Bring down your equals. You can't simplify here, so it's 7 times 5 is 35. Now to get rid of the negative 25, we'll divide by negative 25. Divide by negative 25. I'm running out of room, so I'm going to write it over here. But negative 25 divided by negative 25 is a positive 1. So you have x equals. This will be a negative, positive divided by a negative. And we can simplify by a factor of 5. So if you divide by 5, you get 7. You divide by 5, you get 5. So we have negative 7/5. This is simplified, but it can be written as a mixed number. I'm going to have to write it above here just because I've run out of room. Negative 1 2/5. Looking at this problem, we'll need the least common denominator. Multiples of 7 would be 7. That won't work. 14 still won't work. But 21 works fine because 3 goes into 21. So 21 is our least common denominator. And we multiply each term on each side by 21. With the first two terms I can't simplify, but with this term I can. Divide by 7 is 1. Divide by 7 is 3. And here we can simplify. Divide by 3 is 1. Divide by 3 is 7. So we have 21k bring down your plus. 21 times 4 is 84. Bring down your negative or minus. Here we're left with 3, so 3 times k. Bring down your equal. And 7 times 2. So now we have the equation written with no fractions. I'm going to get rid of this 84, so it's held by addition or subtraction. I'll put negative 84 and negative 84. So in effect I'll be subtracting on this side and on this side. And I have like terms. So 21k, negative 3k, I can combine them. This leaves us with 18k on one side. Bring down the equal. Positive 84, negative 84 leaves me a 0. I don't have to write it. And here, just to emphasize, signs are different. I will subtract. Technically, well, this is 84, and you subtract 14. So that gives you a negative 70. You want to get rid of the 18 held by multiplication, so you use division. Divide by 18, divide by 18. 18 divided by 18 is certainly 1, so you get k is equal to negative divided by a positive. This will be negative, and 2 is a common factor, so 70 divided by 2 is 35. 18 divided by 2 is 9. This is simplified, but I could also write this as a mixed number. 9 goes into 35 3 times, with 8 left over. And you keep your denominator. Looking here, we'll need the least common denominator. Multiples of the biggest is a pretty good way to find them. 15 won't work. The next multiple would be 30, but 4 won't go into 30. Then 45. Finally, when we get to 60, 4 will go into 60, 15 obviously goes, and of course 6 goes into 60. So 60 is our least common denominator. We'll multiply each term on each side by 60. And of course we're going to simplify. Divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 15, divide by 15, divide by 6, divide by 6, divide by 15, divide by 15, and we simply multiply with what's left. 15 times 3 is 45. Bring down your plus. 4 times r. Bring down your minus. 10 times 5. Bring down your equal. And then 4 times 8, 32r. In this case, you're going to want to get rid of the 4r. 4r is held by addition or subtraction. It's positive, so we'll put negative 4r underneath. Put negative 4r on the other side. Positive 4r, negative 4r is 0. I don't have to write it. And these are like terms. So positive 45, negative 50 leaves us with a negative 5. Bring down your equals. The signs are different. We subtract. We're left with 28r. You want r all by itself. So divide by 28. Divide by 28. This becomes 1. 28 divided by 28. So it's 1r is negative 5/28. On these last two problems, rather than multiply by the least common denominator first, in this case it's going to be very easy to combine these two since they already have common denominators. They're on the same side of the equal sign. And over here it'll be easy to combine these two terms first. They're on the same side of the equal sign. So positive 2/9, negative 5/9 will leave us with a negative 3/9. And I'll just bring down everything else. Now looking for the least common denominator. If we look at multiples of 9, 9 won't work. 18 won't work. 27 will not work. But 36 works fine. So we multiply each term by 36. Simplify first. Divide by 4. Divide by 4. We can't simplify here, but here we can. Divide by 9. Divide by 9. So we have 9 times y. Bring down your sign. 36 times y. Bring down your equals. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. We can combine these two. They're on the same side of the equal. It gives us a negative 27y. Bring down the equals in the negative 12. To get rid of that negative 27, we divide by negative 27. Divide by negative 27. Negative 27 divided by negative 27 is 1, so 1y. This will be negative divided by negative will be positive, and there's a common factor of 3. So divide by 3 leaves us with 4. Divide by 3 leaves us with 9. So the y is equal to 4/9. On our final one, we'll combine these two first. 7x negative 10x leaves us with negative 3x. Bring everything else down, so plus 1/4. Looking at our denominators, we want the least common denominator. We'll look at multiples of 10. 10 doesn't work, but 20 does. So 20 is our least common denominator. Multiply each term by 20. Simplify first. Divide by 10. Divide by 10. You can't simplify here, but here we can. Divide by 4. Divide by 4. Multiply what's left. 2 times 3. 20 times negative 3x. This will be positive 5 times 1. I'd say we'll get rid of this positive 5 with a negative 5. It's being added or subtracted. This leaves us with 1 and just negative 60x. To get rid of the negative 60, we'll divide by negative 60. Divide by negative 60. Negative 60 divided by negative 60 is a positive 1. So 1x, or x, is equal to a negative 1/60. If you would like some more practice with these concepts, if you're at my website, I have 2 worksheets, each with a detailed answer key.